Good afternoon. We are going to get started for our Global Learning Showcase session, Widening Circles, Reimagining Ethical Global Engagement for a Post-Pandemic World. My name is Paula Levitt, and I oversee our global experiential learning programs here at the Global Learning Hub. And I'm very excited today that we have Willie from Om Prakash, who's going to be leading us through this presentation. Before I introduce him and pass it off, I just wanted to do a brief overview of the showcase and the Global Learning Hub. I'm not sure if this is your first session or your fifth, but I do want to let you know this is a part of an event series that's happening all of the check out some of the other sessions that you may be interested in. The Global Learning Hub is putting on the Global Learning Showcase this week. And if you have not interacted with the Global Learning Hub, we encourage you to join us online, virtually. We have drop-in advising hours to find out about global learning opportunities that are available on campus, in the region, and around the world. We have study abroad, global internships and research, community engagement, and skills and leadership. So the program and opportunities that we'll be talking about today fall under our community engagement as well as our global internship categories. And so I would like to introduce you to Willie from Om Prakash. And so Willie is an educator and a researcher, and we've interacted at various conferences in the past about community engaged global learning. UC Davis is very much aligned with a lot of the background that Om Prakash brings to their program development, and we wanted to present to students and as well as staff and faculty an opportunity to learn more about some of their programming. And so Willie has worked in classrooms all around the world and is going to tell us a little bit today about Om Prakash and about some of the opportunities that are available for UC Davis students. Willie?
Great. Paula, thank you so much for that warm introduction, and thank you everyone for being here. It's really exciting. I'm really pleased actually with the size of this group. It's a nice intimate group, and so hopefully we can make this fairly conversational. Definitely, I mean, no one has to talk, but I promise you I'm not just planning to talk at you for this entire presentation. I'd love to make this kind of discussion based and exploratory. So I'm going to share my screen in a moment and kind of walk you through some different visual representations of what Om Prakash does and what Om Prakash is. But I actually want to just pause on this opening slide that Paula has shared so that we can really take some time to think about it, because it's not a simple title and there's a lot going on here. So I want to just sort of start by explaining that, and then I'll step back and tell you more about myself and about Om Prakash. So widening circles, reimagining global engagement and participatory action research for a post-pandemic world. What does that mean? I want to introduce a concept here, which hopefully feels fairly tangible and everyone can grasp onto it. And then that concept will kind of guide us through the rest of this discussion. So I would say that before the pandemic, before this like historically unprecedented period of during which international travel has become pretty much out of the question for the time being. You know, when people talked about global engagement, when I said, oh, tell me about your global engagement experiences at UC Davis, or how do you hope to be globally engaged in the future? I would say the immediate assumption was that that would involve traveling in some way. Now, some people might point out that global is not the same as international, and that you can be globally engaged as a person living in, Davis, California, without leaving the United States. But I think there's still some sense of, to be globally engaged is to go out, to go somewhere new, to go away from home. And the concept that we're sort of trying to introduce here with this idea of widening circles is, what if global engagement is actually or at least can be, a process of being where you are, wherever that is, and recognizing the ways that where you are is embedded within and situated within much wider and larger circles of interconnection. And we can describe those circles in terms of the flow of resources and the flow of power, the flow of ideas and knowledge, the flow of people. But the idea is that I can be sitting here in my home in Seattle, and you can be sitting on the UC Davis campus or wherever you may be. And global engagement is not some faraway thing that, hopefully can happen when the pandemic is over and you can buy a plane ticket again, but actually can happen literally right here and right now by observing the world around you, the resources and ideas and relationships and all of these flows in which you are embedded, and thinking about how you are not just only in Davis, California, or Seattle, Washington, or wherever, but that your presence and your impact and the resources you consume and the ideas you consume and the ideas you produce and the relationships you enter, all of these kind of stretch out across the world in these widening circles of engagement. So that's kind of like the theoretical framing here. Maybe that seems really obvious. Maybe that's like you're sitting there saying, oh yeah, well, we already realized that. In which case, great. But what I want to do now is tell you about how, in the context of Om Prakash, we are attempting to sort of build programming and build student experiences out of that theoretical framework. And our title here is not only about global engagement, it's also about participatory action research. And I would say the same principle applies there. So for those of you who are familiar with this approach to research, the idea is that research is not just something we do in the lab or in in the library, but research is something we can be doing in an ongoing way as we engage with various people and various social issues across different contexts. And again, I would point out that it is possible to be doing that kind of work right in your hometown, right where you are. And to be doing it not only with a sort of local lens, but in a kind of global frame as well. So I can go to the grocery store, or I can walk down the street in my own neighborhood. And in doing so, I can be finding ways to engage with not just sort of local community issues, but also with larger global flows of people, knowledge, power, et cetera. That might seem super abstract. You might be thinking, well, how on earth is that possible? And that is partly I'm back. I was booted there for a moment. I don't know if that was just me or everyone. I'm gonna pause. Would someone like to acknowledge that they heard what I said and that it made any sense? Just so we're all kind of here.
Hey, this is Paula. I just missed the last maybe 15 to 20 seconds, but everything leading up I heard.
Okay, great. Thank you, Paula. Let me just open it up a little more here. I won't try to repeat the last few things I said. Based on what I've said so far and whatever you've heard so far, does anyone have any questions or comments? Even if it's just, oh, I've also thought of that thing, or oh, can you explain more about this? I'd love to just kind of break open the dialogue a little bit here. Any questions or comments out there?
Feel free to unmute yourself at this point or use the chat box.
Yeah, we have a small enough group. I think anyone can just sort of jump in. Okay, well, I don't want to put anyone on the spot too much, so I'll keep going, but I do hope that we can hear from some others soon. If necessary, we can do a sort of pause and let's all introduce ourselves. But for now, I'll just keep going a little bit more. But please, at any point, you can raise your hand via Zoom or just unmute yourself and go ahead and ask a question or put it in the chat as well. Okay, so you've all heard my sort of broad theoretical introduction to what this is about and why we're using this framework of widening circles. But now I'm going to try to make it a lot more tangible and tell you about who am I and what do I actually do and what is this thing called Om Prakash. So again, my name is Willie. I live in Seattle. I grew up on the East Coast of the US, but I've been based around Seattle for the last 10 years. And for the last 15 years, I've been helping to lead this nonprofit called Om Prakash, which I actually founded in 2004. And Om Prakash does a lot of different things, but broadly speaking, there's two main things we do. Well, so I should say we're a US-based nonprofit, but we have partner organizations in 50 countries around the world. And so the two major things we do are we provide a platform for these partners to amplify their work. And these partners are all grassroots social impact organizations in the fields of health, education, environment, immigration, human rights, very diverse group of organizations. And they use our platform to recruit volunteers and interns and to fundraise and to access some grants and do other things. That's the first major thing we do. And the second thing is we offer a customized online learning and mentorship platform called EDGE, and anyone can join our various EDGE programs to deepen their own learning and reflection and dialogue. And EDGE also serves as a sort of laboratory, you could say, for participatory action research and community engaged scholarship, which you'll learn more about in a few moments. But so here's our homepage, and just to kind of restate what I just told you, this is a very concise version of our mission statement. We facilitate relationships, dialogue, and learning between social change agents around the world. Social change agents around the world could mean a university student or a university professor, or it could mean any of our grassroots partner organizations about whom you'll be learning more very shortly. Now, just to sort of give a bit more detail here, again, the first major thing is Om Prakash is this network of nearly 200 partners in 50 countries, thousands of volunteers from 138 countries, and partners use our platform to connect with volunteers and interns, researchers, donors, all this different stuff. EDGE is our online learning platform, which I'll be telling you more about in a little bit. And then we also offer space for dialogue and a crowdfunding platform that students as well as partners can use to amplify their work. Now, I want to start by just kind of introducing you to our partners in a bit more detail. So let's suppose you are at home right now and wondering how you can be more engaged with organizations in different parts of the world. You can come right here to our search page and you can browse organizations by region, by country, by the type of work that they do. And you can browse specifically for online positions if you want to. And ultimately, what you'll find is, as I scroll through here, I'm looking at different organizations. And for example, I might open the profile of this partner in South Africa. And the cool thing is this is not like some packaged South Africa study abroad program designed and sold by Om Prakash. This is a locally led organization in Johannesburg, which has autonomously applied to join the Om Prakash network and has created this profile on our site. And so here you can read a bit about their mission statement and what they do, and you can learn about their team, and then you can see the positions that they are currently recruiting for. So let's just say you are, you read their mission and you say, oh, wow, they work with, deaf and hard of hearing infants and children. That's really interesting to me. I might want to work for them in the capacity of supporting their fundraising and development, or I might want to be a researcher doing early childhood education, and they're looking for support with a literature review. I think this could actually be a very good opportunity for undergraduate or graduate student with an interest in medicine and or disability studies. And you can then directly through our site apply for this position. Now, I should pause and say, prior to the pandemic, most people who volunteered through Om Prakash were actually traveling abroad. So you can see here when it says, nearly 27,000 volunteers over the years have gone through Om Prakash. Most of these people were getting on an airplane and traveling and going to work with our partners. These days, that is not happening. And instead, it's mostly all happening via online volunteering. And when we started doing that in March, we were pretty skeptical and unsure, is this going to work? But it's actually been pretty satisfying and rewarding to realize that a lot of partners, as well as students and volunteers, interns, have had really positive experiences doing that kind of remote volunteering. So that could be something you try to do during the academic semester or during a break or during next summer or whatever. But the main message here is you should not feel like, because you're unable to travel right now, that therefore you just need to wait at home for travel opportunities to open up. There's a whole lot of online opportunities via Om Prakash, and our partners are creating new opportunities every day. Let me just pause again. And again, I'd love to just ask, does anyone have any preliminary questions at this point?
I have a question. I saw that it said average daily cost on the example you showed. Is that for in-person
Yes.
volunteering or online volunteering as
Thank
well?
you so much for that question, Paula. So a huge part of the whole Om Prakash approach is about sort of decommodifying international volunteering. So you do not need to pay to volunteer or to intern with one of our partners. That average daily cost figure represents what someone would typically pay to travel and live in that area. And so it's not relevant if you're an online volunteer. There would be no average daily cost associated with that. But it's worth noting, only for the sake of if you're projecting forward to a time when you might be able to travel and work with an organization, many of our partners, the average daily cost is $10 or $20. So what that means is, let's say it's $10 a day and you want to go there for 2 months, you're talking about your total living expenses for 2 months while being with that organization would be $600, which I imagine is quite a lot cheaper than what you might pay just for living expenses in Davis or New York or wherever you may be. So the point is almost all of the positions in our network are unpaid positions. And I certainly recognize that, depending on your situation, that might be a challenge in and of itself to travel somewhere and give up your income. But there is this kind of trade-off with the cost of living being a lot cheaper in many of these places. Having said that, that almost becomes all the more reason that I think online volunteering is really exciting, and I think is here to stay even after this pandemic subsides. Certainly, I do hope people will continue traveling or will resume traveling again. But the cool thing is you could be an online volunteer for one of our partners for 10 hours a week and continue to be a full-time student or continue to have a full-time job or whatever it may be. And so it's not necessarily this binary choice of, if you want to be globally engaged and, you have to travel abroad and put the rest of your life on pause. So I think this is one of the many ways that the pandemic is kind of inviting us to throw out some of our old ways of thinking, namely this idea that, global engagement means you're home and then you go somewhere else and then you come home again. And it invites us to think of all these new ways that we can sort of be doing both at once. So yeah, thank you, Paula, for that question. Any other questions at the moment?
Hi, Willie. Could I just ask, could you talk a little bit about how organizations connect with you and what that screening process is on your end?
Absolutely. Nancy, thanks so much for that question. And I do also see your question in the chat.
That's just more a comment.
Yeah, well, your comment, and I look forward to sharing more about that. I think when I got bumped out of Zoom a few minutes ago, I was just beginning to talk about that aspect of our work. But yeah, so let me actually jump back into the screen share. The answer to Nancy's question is that any organization in the world can apply to become an Om Prakash partner. And so the whole process is quite transparent, and you can read more about it here. So we have about 200 partners right now, but we have thousands of applications over the years. So actually it's quite competitive to be an Om Prakash partner. We're quite selective. We accept about 15 to 20% of applicants, but organizations apply to join Om Prakash so that they can fundraise via our platform, they can recruit volunteers, they can showcase their work, they can access training and capacity building, et cetera. And in terms of how we vet them, we have a lot of info here and a lot more info in our partner expectations document. I'm not going to go through all of that, but what I will say is that this space of global engagement, particularly in higher ed, has been highly commodified over the years, to the extent that there are a lot of organizations that, in my opinion, with all due respect, they have a stated social mission, but that social mission sort of comes second to selling some kind of experience to foreign travelers, tourists, students, et cetera. And that's certainly not the only thing, but that is one of the things that we really watch out for in our review process. Is we ask ourselves, is this a locally led social impact organization that is committed to its social mission on a full-time basis and occasionally or frequently seeks foreign volunteers to come support that work? If so, great. That's the kind of organization we're looking for. Or is this an organization that is, primarily running a study abroad, intern abroad, volunteer abroad business, and is kind of looking for social engagement opportunities for students or travelers who are paying to be there? And the tricky thing is that it can actually be pretty difficult to discern between those two paradigms, but we really try to do so. And organizations that fall into that latter category typically are not a good fit for our model. Beyond that, we look at all the stuff you might imagine in terms of value alignment, in terms of their overall mission. We look at their team. We look at reviews from past volunteers or other visitors. We look at their finances. And yeah, we try to ask the bigger questions of, is this an organization that's getting towards the root causes of a social issue and working in a more holistic effort for social change? Or is this kind of like a Band-Aid type of, feel good effort that might have a really glossy website, but doesn't necessarily dig into the root causes of a social issue? So those are some of the broad factors. I'm certainly happy to share more details about that if anyone's interested. Other questions at the moment? Great. Well, I'm going to keep going, but please do jump in anytime. And so I've told you a bit about our partner network and sort of the overall structure of Om Prakash, but now I'm really excited to tell you about this new Widening Circles program that we've developed. And we developed this program in response to the pandemic, as as I was describing before, as we kind of started to confront the reality that a lot of our typical ways of thinking about global engagement and study abroad and community-based research were all going to change a little bit. And we realized that students could still be connecting with our partners and still be exploring bigger questions related to power and privilege and difference and identity and all the questions we've always loved to explore. But they would be doing that from home. And so what does that mean? How does that introduce some different challenges? So we launched this new Widening Circles program, and this is a public program that anyone can join, but we've also launched customized versions of it with different university partners. And at the end of this presentation, I'll share a little bit of info about how we're working to do that with UC Davis as well. But the basic idea of the program, first of all, this image of Widening Circles comes from a poem by Rainer Maria Rilke. I live my life in widening circles that reach out across the world. And that image is very inspiring to me, and hopefully to all of you, especially at this time when it feels like in so many ways our lives are sort of reduced and confined. And it's really, I think, inspiring to ponder the ways that our lives are still embedded in these widening circles, and thinking about all the different ways that we can still be reaching out across the world. So the core program involves engaging with core social issues in your own local context, wherever that may be, online internships with Om Prakash partners, peer-to-peer learning and mentorship within our EDGE platform, which I'm about to show you, an optional curriculum concentration in a thematic area, such as education and social change, global health, environmental justice, etc. Mostly all of this is asynchronous. Students do it on their own time, but there is the opportunity for weekly live calls and webinars. And then ultimately every participant is doing their own digital storytelling project and building a digital portfolio, which essentially documents their ongoing engagement throughout these widening circles, both at home and away. So I want to show you what it looks like. Anyone can come here and scroll to the bottom, read more, and register. And once you are registered, you join our EDGE online learning community. So Widening Circles is one particular program we're running on our EDGE platform. And so you can see here, hopefully this looks and feels different than some other online learning experiences you may have had. This is not Canvas. It's not, an endless series of Zoom calls. It's really intended to be dynamic and exciting, primarily asynchronous, multimedia, creative learning, again, with some occasional synchronous calls. So you can see here, you can scroll through and chat with different members of the cohort. I can open up the directory and I can see all the different members of the cohort. And the cool thing to know is that each member has their own profile page, which becomes their digital portfolio. And you'll see more of that in a moment. I can also see recent activity within the cohort. So just in the last few days, I can see different participants have been going through and engaging with the classroom. There's some other bells and whistles here, but the main thing I want to do is jump into the classroom and show you how this works. Because again, I'm hoping that this is fairly different and hopefully a bit more dynamic and exciting than perhaps some of the other online learning experiences you've had. And I'm sure hopefully you've had many wonderful online learning experiences as well in recent months. But the basic structure here is that within our classroom, there's a certain number of units, and within each unit, there's a certain number of slides. And as you go through the slides, you might have some text, or you might have an embedded video or or photo essay or whatever it may be. Here's an example of a embedded video that we have. And then participants can come in and can discuss this content. And so we're starting off here in Unit 1, just kind of pondering the moment we're in and how it invites us to see the Earth, see life on Earth through a new lens. We're kind of using the metaphor of space travel as a way to think about that. But then ultimately, here in Unit 1, we are giving guidance to students on how to find an internship with an Om Prakash partner. And we're talking about our unique approach here of how we don't sell placements with organizations, but rather we invite students to apply for actual positions that organizations have created. And ultimately, we're directing students to go to the search page and start applying for positions. So the idea is that by the time students are done with Unit 1 of the program, they are all starting to apply to our partners. And they're sort of going through this online classroom concurrently with their internship search process. Now, at the end of each unit, there's some kind of a prompt. And the prompt in this case is asking students to imagine, in what sense is this pandemic a portal? Here we're building off of a reading from earlier in the cohort, but in what sense is the pandemic a portal, and how can we use this opportunity as an opportunity for personal and social transformation? So in every unit, students will submit a response to the prompt. And when they submit that response, it goes into the roundtable. So here's the roundtable. And I can see here, different participants from all over the world have submitted their responses, and they're going through everyone's going through at their own pace. But for example, I can see that Alia here in Unit 1 has submitted a video response, and then every student is matched with a mentor, and the mentor can come in and add comments. And then in Unit 2, this student submitted a written response, and again, the mentor has given a comment, and others have also come in and commented. So it's meant to be a very dynamic and engaging digital learning experience in that sense. Ultimately, what we're trying to do in this classroom and throughout the program more broadly is to ask some much harder questions. Namely, what are the challenges or the risks of trying to help others when crossing significant differences of culture and power? So it's not enough to just say, oh, I want to be a good person, I want to be a global citizen, I want to volunteer abroad. We need to think about the complexities of doing that and the many ways in which, in doing so, we might fall into various traps of savior impulses and sort of neo-colonial paternalistic dynamics that might inadvertently recycle some of the same kinds of power dynamics that we might actually be trying to challenge. So a lot of our curriculum is exploring that kind of thing. And just as an example, many of you who are familiar with this kind of space of community engagement and volunteering may have encountered this essay, "To Hell with Good Intentions," by this guy, Ivan Illich, who made this speech in 1968, basically critiquing Americans who were going to volunteer abroad in Mexico. And ironically, to reread this to today, one of the things that Illich says is, if you have any responsibility at all, stay with your riots here at home. And that seems like a particularly relevant thing to be saying to Americans today in 2020. So within this Widening Circles classroom, we are pushing students to reflect on, what does it mean to be in America and wanting to engage with other parts of the world? And what does it also mean to be in America and wanting to engage with things going on in this country right now, especially right now? And so we're trying to really dig into all of those big, heavy questions in the EDGE classroom. Again, there's lots of opportunities for students to be reflecting and discussing this stuff. And needless to say, we don't have the time right now to try to walk through this full curriculum bit by bit, but I'm just trying to give you a taste of it. And we really do, we've rebuilt a lot of our curriculum in recent months to try to dig into not just the pandemic, but also the ongoing struggle for racial justice and the way that things happening in the United States and in the global movement for Black lives, how that is pushing all of us to think in new ways about questions around justice and equity and citizenship and lots of these kinds of questions. So ultimately, as students go on through the classroom, one thing that we start to really emphasize is the power of storytelling and the power of listening to the stories from others and helping to share those stories in a really dynamic and powerful way. And this is where we come into the participatory research elements of the program. So we introduced, for example, many of you may have seen this before, it's a classic TED Talk, The Danger of a Single Story, talking about the value of hearing a plurality of voices and not simply settling for one simple narrative, and always digging in to understand more. And again, historically, this would be a great justification for why you should travel, why you should go somewhere new. But we are trying to say right now, hey, even without leaving home, even during this pandemic, we can all participate in making new stories that include new voices, and we can resist the danger of the single story. So for example, as we go through this unit, we introduce students to participatory methods such as photo voice, which is essentially giving cameras to other people and asking them to document their own lives and then pulling that back together. We talk about participatory video. We talk about the ethics of photography, and we use some satirical Instagram accounts, for example, to help think about the ways that people tend to represent their global engagement and how we can do better than that. And ultimately, we also talk about research ethics and informed consent, what that means, especially in a digital environment. And we talk about ethnographic field notes and what does it mean to study the world around you through an ethnographic lens. And we have some, examples of what that can look like. So ultimately, as concurrent with their internships and their work in the EDGE classroom, students are ultimately doing their own digital storytelling projects. And we provide a lot of guidelines here and a series of prompts. But the idea is that even without leaving your home, through the internet and through the connections you form in this program, you can be doing your own participatory action research in conjunction with your internship. And so as students go through the program and they create their own digital portfolios, all of their posts aggregate to this shared page. And I can see here students from all over the world are documenting their experience of the pandemic, their experience within this Widening Circles program. And they're using some of the core themes of the classroom around inequality and power and difference. They're applying those themes to the world around them. So this student is talking about essentially the history of racial segregation in Seattle. This student is talking about, she was actually abroad in Peru when the pandemic started and then came home and is thinking about, mobility and difference through that kind of lens. It goes on and on. This student's talking about, power dynamics at home in a mountain town in Colorado. Some students are talking about homelessness in their hometowns. And in the ideal case, what we're really going for is that students are, again, documenting the world around them and documenting the worlds that they're engaging with through their internship. And looking for the overlaps and the points of connection and tension between these and seeing how all of these widening circles are interconnected. And remember, I shared with you before that every participant has their own profile, and that profile essentially becomes a digital portfolio. So each student in a given Widening Circles program will end up with a profile like this with a neat URL that they can share with friends and family and perhaps future employers. And then that profile sort of aggregates all of their different storytelling posts. And so rather than submit a 10-page Word document via Canvas, which maybe your professor gives you feedback on, but then it never really sees the light of day again, the idea here is we want to enable all of our participants to create something that's colorful, creative, multimedia rich, and publicly shareable. We appreciate the need for privacy, but we also appreciate the need for public advocacy and for getting your voice out there and telling a story that matters to a broader audience. That's not just about, fulfilling a classroom assignment, but it's about sharing a larger story. There's so much more that I would love to share with you all, but I think I'm going to pause here and once again, open it up for questions of any kind. How can we join this program? That's such a wonderful question from Sophia, and I will give you the answer to that very shortly. In fact, I'll do it right now. But what other questions are out there?
I'm curious. Oh, go ahead.
So Elizabeth just asked in the chat, and hi, Elizabeth, thank you so much for being here. Are students also taking local action in their own communities in addition to the virtual global internship? And the answer is yes, definitely, or at least that's what we want. That's what we're encouraging. We had a webinar a couple of weeks ago that was all about voter engagement as praxis and encouraging our students to be volunteering as poll workers or engaging in the election in other ways. And yeah, there's really no limit. It obviously is going to vary based on the participant. But for me personally, I've been trying to live my, live this path in my own way. And so I've been, over the last few weeks, volunteering at a food shelter here in Seattle, which is undergoing a huge housing crisis and hunger crisis. And I've been working to sort of understand that the granularity of that local issue in dialogue with and in tension with some of these much broader global issues that we're exploring in the classroom. So that's definitely the idea.
And I have one more question. Can you hear me?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier that most of it is asynchronous, yet there was an option for, getting together online, in synchronous time. Given that, I mean, it sounds like a lot of the reflection is happening through writing, with feedback from the mentors and other peers in the program. But is that synchronous piece mandatory, or like, I imagine that would also be an important platform for reflection, guided reflection, maybe led by folks on your team. I'm just curious about that.
Sure. So I would never deny the value of being in live dialogue with others, with peers and with mentors and friends. At the same time, I have a lot of empathy for students right now who are burned out on Zoom, and I also just have a lot of practical appreciation for the fact that with time zones and technology and so on, trying to get everyone on a Zoom call together is sometimes really hard. So in our public program that anyone can join, there are weekly calls. Every single week, there's at least one discussion group call, and we do it on kind of a rotating schedule to accommodate different time zones. But ultimately, those are optional. We do see great participation there, but it's, we're not going to force someone to wake up at 2 a.m. or to miss school or miss their work in order to join a call. However, when we build these custom programs for different universities, then it's sort of just up to the university, and we can customize the requirements however we want. So we're running a program right now with University of Washington, full credit bearing, 5 credit program. And so in that case, the weekly discussion group is mandatory, or we might say, a certain, over the duration of the quarter, you have to attend at least 5 of these or whatever. So it's certainly not difficult for us to just say, this is mandatory. But at the same time, we've gotten feedback from students of, wow, I really appreciate that this is a course where I'm able to feel, intellectually engaged, but that the timing is flexible. And I was talking to a student last week who said she's on Zoom calls from noon to 5:30, 3 days a week or something like that. And so she was actually saying, I'm so glad that in this program, I don't have to do that. And, I hope to join a call when I can, but I've been able to get a lot out of it without being on those live calls as well. Thank you for that question. To Sophia's question in the chat, how can we join this program? I'm excited to share a link to a landing page for the UC Davis version of this program that we have recently set up. Now, I'm just going to show it to you again. It's going to look familiar to what you've already seen, but I've been working with Paula and with other colleagues at UC Davis to set up this new opportunity. Many of the details are still yet to be determined in terms of the exact timing and the other logistics. But what you can do is you can scroll right down and register here at the bottom of the page, and then you'll be essentially signing up for more info. So anyone who's interested, please feel free to go right ahead and do that. And again, here's the link. I put it in the chat. Having said that, if you don't want to wait for the UC Davis program to officially launch, this program, the Public Widening Circles program, is truly open to anyone in the world. And so I'll just share that link as well. I think if you're a UC Davis student, it would be wonderful for you to be able to join the UC Davis program and connect with other Davis students there. But certainly anyone is welcome to join our public program. And if you have questions about that, feel free to contact me. But the link is right there at the bottom of the page. And Paula, did you want to say more about that?
Thank you so much, Willie. Yeah, I'm not sure the breakdown of folks on this call. If I see a couple of students, some staff, maybe some faculty. So I just wanted to mention, if you are faculty and or staff and are really interested in working with me to make this happen for UC Davis, please feel free to reach out to me after. I'm also curious to hear from the students who are here with the little bit of time that we have left. What drew you to this session? and maybe one thing that you are excited to learn about.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nadia. Thank you, Willie Paula, for setting this. It's really important and interesting for me. What drew me here is the community participatory research. I'm really interested to include it in my research and learn more about strategies to have that aspect in my research. And I'm really excited to join the program, Edge, the Davis Circle. I already pulled up the link. So I registered to see how to join, and I was really happy to see one Moroccan university when I was looking to the opportunities for an internship. And since from my Morocco, so I directly went there and searched. So that's really nice. Thank you so much.
Wow, Nadia, that's so exciting. Thank you. And I have the unique pleasure, actually, of I just realized that one of our partner organizations from Argentina is present on the call, or a representative, Valeria. And Valeria, thank you for being here. Would you care to say anything about how all of this looks from the perspective of an Om Prakash partner, and perhaps in particular, this idea of community engaged research and what it looks like for students to be involved in that sort of research without even traveling to Argentina? I'm sure many on the call would love to hear that. And I want to say to everyone, I had no idea that Valeria was joining us, actually, so it's really exciting. Valeria, welcome.
Hi everyone. Yeah, sorry, my English is not great. I'm just understanding some information, not everything, but it's great for us. We have been partnered from Om Prakash for more than 10 years, yeah? And it's great for us to have the opportunity to listen different point of view related with different things you do, yeah? We know that it's important to listen volunteers, to listen other partners, universities, and for this reason I decided to join this conversation because it's great, and Om Prakash always let us communicate with different people and countries, and this it's for me it's amazing to listen people that it's related to universities, because we are in a small NGO from Argentina. For us, it's so hard to look for volunteers or understand exactly what they are looking for. Then it's great to have these courses. We have participating in age program, and we have the opportunity to share with volunteers, with another partners, and for us it's great. And for sure I'm not answering your question, Willie.
No, it's fine. That's wonderful. If you do want to share a little more, and no pressure, I was just wondering if you have any examples of how students or volunteers have been able to get involved with like community-based research in your community. Can you share anything about that?
Maybe. Okay. Okay. It's really important to try to listen with the volunteer before arriving. It's important they have a train before with Om Prakash or with us. It's important to be sure we are understanding each other, what they are going to do here. We receive volunteers for many different areas, and we try to arrange in advance if they are going to work with children, or if they are interested in something related to their careers, or it's something different that they want to try, or if they are going to work with adolescents, or in a kindergarten, or in a soup kitchen. Sometimes many volunteers want to be involved in a kitchen. Well, I I'm in charge of gardening, agroecological gardening, and we receive many volunteers for exchanging about options here and in other parts of the world. Yeah, it's important, listen volunteers and train them, and be sure that when they come here to Argentina, in our case, yeah, they really know they will be useful, and it's our job to prepare them to be useful and feel included. You can be useful just trying to talk with adolescents. Yeah, useful is well, maybe we need to define useful. Yeah, because sometimes just talking and laughing with adolescents and share experiences, it's useful. Yeah. But if we know about the volunteer, we can go deeper in our work and in the volunteer experience. Yeah, the balance is great if we are really connected. And with Omprakash, we have this opportunity, and more than this, we share another things. For example, tomorrow it's a conversation about food sovereignty. I have no chance to listen how things are going in India. But through these conversations, I really have discovered many things about different countries. And after seminars, not seminars, but something like this, I was able to connect with another experiences. And yeah, that's all.
wonderful.
Sorry.
Thank you so much. No, please don't say sorry. That's wonderful. Thank you. So yeah, Valeria just mentioned tomorrow, actually, we are hosting a webinar about food sovereignty. I just put the link into the chat where anyone can sign up. But the webinar tomorrow, just as one example, it features someone from one of our partners in Mexico, someone from a partner in India, someone from a partner in Cameroon, and someone from a partner in Southern California, which is called Feed Black Futures, and supports the families of incarcerated African Americans by connecting them with nutritious food from farms in Southern California, which are primarily Black-led farms. So that's just one example of how we are trying to create conversations that, as Valeria said, are bringing together perspectives and voices from many different places, around some shared topics. And just to back up a little more, Valeria, thank you so much for sharing all of that information and your own experience as an Omprakash partner. And I would just add to that, as Valeria was saying, there's so much value in just being able to connect people and a volunteer, even a remote online volunteer, through connecting with adolescents or others in of course, like a structured and supervised way. There's a lot of meaning and power there. And this is the transition back to talking about community-based research. That is a source of very interesting and meaningful data, actual empirical data about what is happening in our world. What does it look like? What does social change, what does social inequality, social exclusion look like in a particular neighborhood in Buenos Aires in 2020, for example? And so for students or for faculty who are thinking, oh yeah, this idea of community-based participatory research is really, really exciting, but I don't know where to start. All the other research I've done is just in the library. And I especially don't know what it would look like in the middle of a pandemic. I really do believe that Omprakash offers some exciting opportunities for that, even if it is via Zoom or WhatsApp. The point is, this is a network of people. It's a network of people and organizations around the world. And at every little nodal point of that network, there's an interesting story to be told. And all of us can be working together to be documenting those stories and resharing them with a broader audience. So that's kind of a broad overview of what we do and what is possible. We might have time for a few more questions, but I also just want to say thank you so much, everyone, for being here.
One question that I think might help clarify some things for folks is, you talked about two distinct opportunities that are available through Own Precaution. I know many students do both of them. One would be identifying an opportunity through your not placement, but your search tool that's available for free for students to search. And then the other being the EDGE platform. You could just talk a little bit about whether students can identify placements not going through EDGE and participate in EDGE, not necessarily utilizing a placement through Open Precaution. Maybe they have their own internship or they want to do something locally that they found on their own. Just the value of what EDGE could bring to that experience, and as well as separately if they were not ready necessarily to sign up for the EDGE program.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Paula. So anyone can go to our search page and browse opportunities. That's open to the public. You can go and check out Valeria's organization, which is called Voluntario Global, and you can apply to work with them today. And you don't need to sign up for any additional program. You don't need my permission. You don't need permission from UC Davis. You can just do that. And that's part of the beauty of Om Prakash. However, if you feel that you might get more out of that experience, more learning, more reflection, more dialogue, more mentorship, potentially some kind of academic credit, potentially some kind of structured multimedia digital portfolio that you can then share with friends and family and employers and so on. Perhaps that could then become the basis of an independent study that you do at UC Davis, or perhaps it becomes the basis of your senior thesis project or even your graduate school research project. Those are the things that you can get from joining EDGE, or joining, in this case, our Widening Circles program. So hopefully that makes sense. Essentially, you have the network of opportunities you're welcome to explore, but Widening Circles and any of our EDGE programs, but for now we're focusing on Widening Circles, and in particular the UC Davis cohort. It will give you a intellectual framework and a peer-to-peer learning community and a mentorship structure that's going to help you go deeper in your own critical reflection and dialogue. Now, to answer the last part of Paula's question, if you join Widening Circles and you actually decide, you know what, I'm not ready for an internship right now, but I still want to go through this curriculum. I still want to have a mentor. I still want to do a research project that explores my local context. You're absolutely welcome to do so. So there's no requirement to do an internship. So just to simplify that, what I would say is, if any of this talk has been interesting to you, I encourage you to join the UC Davis Widening Circles cohort. Details will be coming soon, but for starters, you can go to that page I shared in the chat and just register. If you're not sure when you want to do an internship, that's fine. You don't have to do an internship at all. But by joining the cohort, you'll be opening yourself up to all these different opportunities. I'll leave it there. I know it's 2 o'clock. Thank you so much, everyone. It's really been a pleasure. And lastly, you know what? I'm just going to put my personal email address into the chat, and I would truly love to hear from any of you anytime. I'll share my phone number as well. Don't be a stranger. I'd love to hear from you. And Paula, thanks again for hosting, and really thank you everyone for making the effort to be here.
Just want to thank Willie again. Thank you so much. And for students, wanted to just remind you that this is part of an ongoing showcase that is going through this week. We also have some other events through our Global Career Development Series that you might be interested in, as well as there's a law school fair, graduate school fair this week, lots of things. If you wouldn't mind just taking 1 minute to complete the session evaluation, that would be much appreciated. And we can stay on the call a few minutes longer if anyone has any additional questions.